Hello, welcome to Parents, Families, and Friends. I'm Paul Clifford, and this program, Parents, Families, and Friends, is brought to you by parents, families, and friends of lesbians and gays and bisexuals and transgenders and intersex and queer and transsexual people. We call that PFLAG for short. You can find out more about PFLAG by going to www.pflag.org. That's www.pflag.org. One topic of concern that is on everyone's minds, and most importantly on the minds of those who have gay and lesbian loved ones, is the issue of same-gender marriage. As you probably know, the California Supreme Court ruled that same-gender marriage is an absolute fundamental right, a right guaranteed by the Constitution of the state of California, a right guaranteed to all people. Everyone has a choice of whom they want to marry, and the state should recognize that marriage. But soon there'll be a ballot proposition that seeks to overturn the California Constitution by amending that right, by removing the fundamental right of marriage from some people, from gay and lesbian people in particular. We're going to talk about that in today's program, and we'll talk about it again with a gay or lesbian couple. In this case, we're joined by Jennifer and Melissa. Welcome so much to the program.
Thank you.
Now, you two have been married, I think, several times now.
Twice.
To each other, right?
Yes. Only twice so far.
This is one of the problems with the convolutions of law. Generally, heterosexual people only have to get married once, and then it's done. But you've been together how long? Let me start with you, Melissa. When did you first meet Jennifer?
In 1988, so it'll be 20 years this November.
Gosh! So, what was that? Grade school?
In college.
In college. Okay. And after 20 years, how long were you together before you first got married?
So we had our commitment ceremony on our 10-year anniversary, so we'd been together 10 years. And that was, for us, that was our real marriage. We did it up the way any couple would, with family, friends, the whole 9 yards. And then when we got married in August, that was more a legal checking the box. I think we really consider the commitment ceremony that we had in 1998.
As our wedding.
That was your wedding.
Yeah, that was our wedding. Yeah.
So while that
white
wedding,
dresses and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Now, while that marriage wasn't at the time recognized by the state of California, it was recognized by all your family and friends, your parents and siblings.
Yeah. Yes. Everyone. All of our family members came just like they would to my sister's wedding or Jen's sister's wedding.
Our parents paid for it.
Your parents paid for your wedding?
Paid
Okay.
for the wedding.
Yes.
That's pretty good.
It's better, if you're lesbian, because they each had to pay half. Instead of one parent, usually the bride's parents pay for the wedding, We got them to each pay half. And then
So, I know from most of my friends who are married, same-gender friends, that the relationships it's a lot more equitable very often than heterosexual relationships. But even when it comes to the wedding, things are a lot more equitable.
Yes. And
neither of us was sold to the other person
exactly.
for a dowry.
And I have no idea what it's like in a heterosexual marriage, so it seems normal to us.
Yeah. Now, you have some wedding pictures right here.
Yes.
I'd like to look at a few of them.
Certainly.
Yeah, I was looking at some of these.
Melissa gives me a bad time because I love to get this down and show it to anybody who'll show it the least bit of interest. And I'm like, would you like to see our pictures?
Right. Well, you brought this big scrapbook, and it's just full of these elegant pictures of your wedding. Where was this? It's such a beautiful setting.
It was in Elliston Winery in Sonoma.
Oh, so that's pretty near to where you live in Fremont.
Yes, it's about 20 minutes away, but it was really nice because you felt like you were totally away from the big city.
Yeah, you'd gone to Napa or something, but it didn't cost as much as
really
Napa. It was a lot closer.
beautiful winery, vineyards. So here you are, Jennifer, with your family.
Mm-hmm.
Is this your grandma?
That's my grandmother.
Wow. Well, she looks so happy there. I think she's finally happy to give you away.
That's right. Get rid of me. My grandparents, my living grandparents were there. Melissa's living grandparents were there. Our parents, our siblings, our cousins,
Yeah.
I had a friend, a lesbian friend who was there, and she and her partner were there, and she said to me, afterwards, she said, this is the most radical thing I've ever seen. She's like, because you did it just like, lesbians are supposed to get married just like everyone else. You had a wedding and you danced with you had first dance with your dads and you had a cake and you did it. It was very traditional in many ways. And she said it was just by being so traditional, it was the most radical thing she'd ever seen. And I thought that was awesome.
Well, what I see here is a very traditional white dress wedding with huge bouquets of flowers, and well, there you are with all of your family, string quartet and everything.
Yeah. So after the wedding was really for us, and our parents had accepted us and our relationship. But then after the wedding, my mother said to Jen, now that you're married, I really feel like you're part of the family. And, you know, the implication was, well, you weren't
We've been
quite
together 10
part
years
of the
at this
family.
point,
Right,
you know,
right.
so.
Well, you know, that's not so different than heterosexual relationships, too, because I know so many couples who, you know, have been together a long, long, long time, but in their parents' eyes, they aren't quite a couple until they're married. You know,
Well,
they're
marriage
just,
is a ritual that our
they're like
society
dating.
understands. You know, it's part of the, you know, little girls dream about growing up and getting married, and I'm not quite sure what little boys dream about. Whether they dream about that or dread that, but you know,
They dream
it's
about
one of those
little girls.
That's right. It's one of those rituals that you just kind of expect to be part of your life at some point.
Right.
And so it's you know.
But for so many gay and lesbian couples I know of, they grew up sort of expecting that of themselves until they really came to an understanding that they were gay or lesbian. And then they went through a kind of period of mourning where they sort of tossed off all those expectations, and they finally, you know, sort of came to this realization, oh, well, that's not for me. This life that everyone's been promising me since I was born, this life that everyone had laid out for me, this life that everyone had hoped that I would live, including myself, that's not the life I'm going to lead. And then they had to sort of figure out on their own, or with other gay and lesbian people, what sort of life they actually would lead.
Well, in a way, that's why this person thought it was so radical, because we were taking back something that, like, she herself had to throw off and think was not going to be part of her life.
Right.
And I think she saw us as taking that back. And I also think that's one of those things when you talk to parents of gay and lesbian people, and you say, well, you know, they say, well, I love my child, but I want their life to be easy and not hard. And when you come out to your parents, they're having to let go of those expectations that they've had. And now that we're parents, I understand that. I mean, you know, I want to go to Nathan's graduation, and I want to be there at his wedding, and I want to do those things.
Right,
and so
right.
parents have to, that's a mourning process that they go through
Yes.
too. So I think then to be able for them to go through this all with us was fun and an enjoyable.
Well, for yourselves, though, had you sort of gone through that process and mourned this life you knew you wouldn't have, but then somehow reclaimed it? Or did you just always expect, you know, the fairy tale would come true for you, and it actually did?
Well, I don't think I ever gave it up. I'd been trying to convince her to marry me for 10 years, and I just finally
Yes.
wore her down. So,
And for me, I never had that expectation. I think my parents got divorced, and that made me very wary of getting married at all. And
Right.
so, you know, not being able to get married since I was a lesbian was okay, because I never saw myself doing it. So yes, it took Jen a long time to talk me into doing it.
Oh, that's an interesting point you bring up, because even if I look at many of my gay couple friends or other gay friends, those whose parents, you know, got together and were married their whole lives, and they obviously had a loving relationship, they want to get married. Okay, that's all they really want. They want to find that partner whom they're just going to love for the rest of their lives, for better or for worse. Whereas a lot of my friends whose parents were divorced sort of have that model. They're kind of skeptical of marriage. They think, oh, well, marriage is okay, but, you know, you never can trust another person, and it's that kind of thing.
Right, and yeah, I just didn't see it as part of the definition of who I was. So.
But now it is.
Yes, it is. Well, you know,
more than once.
a relationship is about compromise, so.
Well, let me ask you, though, and I'll preface this question by saying this is not a question that I would ask any heterosexual couple, right? Because heterosexual and gay couples grow up really differently, and there's a climate of discrimination. I wouldn't ask most heterosexual couples, why did you want to get married? What did marriage really mean to you? What was it that you were trying to grasp? Because everybody just knows. But I think many of my viewers would think me deficient if I didn't ask you that question. Like, why was marriage so important to you? Well, since Jennifer's the one who was always asking you to get married, let me ask Jennifer.
Thank you.
Why did you have to get married?
I think there is that thing that I'm going to grow up and I'm going to meet somebody and I'm going to get married, and you kind of, I wanted to have the party and all the great album and the pictures, but I also, the one thing that I've found as a lesbian, I get really tired of being invisible. And it happens a lot as parents because our son Nathan, Melissa carried him and had him, and they definitely look very much alike. And so when we're out as a family, people are like, oh, well, there's that woman and her child and their friend. And I get tired of being invisible as a couple and invisible as a family. Now, we didn't have Nathan at the time, but to have a big party and to kind of shout from the rooftops that this is important and this is not going anywhere and this is who we are and what we want. And I also think, part of what marriage is having the support of your family and your friends and your, that acknowledgement of your relationship as a form of support, and by having a wedding, you're saying, hey, we're here and this is what this is and it's important to us and you need to support us.
Right. And I think a lot of people, friends and family, don't quite know how to react to a gay or lesbian relationship. So one thing marriage may do is
He puts it in a context that they understand.
Exactly. It's an affirmative ritual that gives them permission now to treat you as a couple.
Right. Right. Yeah.
That's not all that different than straight marriage either, I guess.
No.
Well, let me fast forward through the wedding. Oh my God, these are beautiful pictures. But there was one at the end here that appears to be a post-wedding picture by a couple years. Maybe judging from his age, about 5 years.
Well, this is 10 years after our commitment.
Oh, 10 years after
ceremony.
your commitment. So,
Yes.
Oh, right.
And
But this guy is then
He's 4.5.
he's 4.5.
4.5.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you decided to have Nathan. Why was that? What did you want?
Should I let you answer this question also?
I think, even more so for me growing up than saying I want to grow up and get married is I just had always assumed that I would have kids and I wanted to have children. And so, you do a lot of talking when you're not going to have an oops and it's not just going to happen to you, and it has to be a very, what's the word I want?
Deliberate action.
Deliberate action.
When a child was actually
then
planned.
you make a lot of, questions about, well, do I want to change my life? And what's wrong with the way our life is now? And will it be better or will it be worse and stuff like that? And finally, at some point, you just have to say, and we came to the conclusion, we can't answer those questions one way or the other, and we're just going to jump off this cliff and see what happens. And that really is kind of what it's like.
And
so you jumped into Parenthood?
Yes.
Yes, it was really, for me, if I don't do this, will I regret it? And I couldn't answer that question, and so it was like, well, I guess we just better do it and see what
We
happens.
really just want someone to take care of us in our old age, so.
Right.
No.
But, yeah.
So this is the quintessential suburban family photo.
Yes.
You've got
With the
real,
clashing outfits and
Yeah.
yeah,
it's hard to
I don't know, Leave It to Beaver clashing outfits on there.
Yes, that's actually the day we had our legal wedding.
Welcome.
Right after we had the legal
We
wedding,
come to be
which
with
was
in our living room.
Yes.
Melissa Holmes on this most happy occasion. If so, answer by saying, I do.
I do.
Melissa, will you have Jen as your beloved wife? By the authority vested in me as a minister, I recognize you joined as a married couple under the laws of California. And with these present witnesses, we rejoice in recognizing the love you share. Amen.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, he was such a good ring bearer. Yes, did a perfect job.
Yes, a bit of a shotgun affair just to get it done.
That's interesting. So you were married, but in the eyes of the state, of course, you weren't married.
Right.
So legally you're still not married. And then you had a child, and did that pose any problems, not being legally married and having a child?
Well, all of it. You have
What-
to have, even if just having a relationship and not being legally married, you have to have you have to jump through a lot of hoops that people don't. You have to go through and you have to put together, trusts and power of attorney for finance and power of attorney for health, and you have to basically do legally what happens automatically when you get married. So you have to put all these legal entities into place so that if something should happen to one of you, that things are taken care of for the other person, and that it's not a big mess. And so then the same thing when you have a child, you have to jump through additional hoops and stuff. So we, Melissa bore Nathan, so that was all set. But then I had to do a second parent adoption of Nathan, which luckily in the state of California is just really not a big deal.
So in some states it's illegal.
Yes,
I believe like
yes,
Florida.
it's not possible. In Oklahoma, it's not. It's not even possible. Here, it's fairly routine. So, but it still costs $5,000. You got to pay for the home visit, and you've got to have your friends fill out all these forms, and the social workers have to come and visit you, and you have to hire a lawyer, and and it takes. I think it took us 6 months. We were set up so that we could start as soon as he was born, and then it still took us 6 months.
6 months of work and a $5,000 hurdle just so that you can be Nathan's parent.
So that Nathan has 2 legal parents instead of one legal parent.
Right. Now, right now, what happened after, that's what it was when Nathan was born. Now, before marriages were allowed in the state of California, they did change the domestic partner, and if you were registered as domestic partners, then you were automatically both put on the birth certificate when the child was born. However, that was only in the state of California, and you still had to do the second parent adoption, so that if you left the state, which, hell, let's go on vacation, that and when we go on vacation, we have to take our adoption papers and all kind of his birth certificate and our power of attorney things, and God forbid something happen on vacation or something in a different state.
You have to go to a hospital.
We have to go to a hospital.
Exactly.
We have to be able to prove that we can make decisions for one another and stuff like that. So we have to automatically, that just goes into our suitcase, and stuff.
Your sheath of legal
Yes.
documents.
I mean, which is kind of not exactly what you want to pack when you're going on vacation, but you have to do it.
You have to do it. Yeah, and the trouble is that there are really sad precedents
Yes.
where
Yes.
gay or lesbian couples have traveled in other states, and hospitals and other institutions have not recognized their relationship. Sometimes even if they had all the legal papers. So it's
And when you have children,
always
it's
a
just that
problem.
much more
Right.
compounded.
Right,
that
because
you have to-
you're always worried about the
Yeah.
child.
And I do trust my parents. I would trust that they would do the right thing, but it is so hard to know what the state might do, or wherever you happen to be,
Right.
if something happened.
Right.
So.
So you had Nathan, and around that time, the city of San Francisco started issuing marriage licenses.
Right.
And so a lot of people went up to the San Francisco City Hall. I think within the week, 4,000 couples.
That was great.
Yes.
It was really a beautiful sight up there, just
Yeah.
people getting married, one after another.
Yes.
But you didn't get married by the
No.
city of San
No.
Francisco at the time.
We wanted to, and we seriously considered it, but we were in the middle of the second parent adoption for Nathan, and we were concerned that if we did get married and something happened with that, then it would then somehow snowball into the legal proceedings for Nathan's adoption, and we just
It
couldn't
could
take the
jeopardize
chance.
that.
Yeah,
Exactly.
because if we got married, then there was no need to do the second parent adoption, but so we would have had to stop that process. But then, as happened, if the marriages were then annulled, then we wouldn't have this. We'd have to start the second parent adoption process all over again,
yes.
and it really wasn't worth
Opens
it.
up a can of worms.
It wasn't
Yeah.
worth it. It's
Yeah.
interesting because I felt in those 6 months after he was born and before we did the second parent adoption, even though there really was no danger, but until we had that and I knew that I had legally adopted him and was in the eyes of the law his parent, it was very unsettling and very
It's a feeling of
very
insecurity.
frightening, you know, and yeah, a big feeling of insecurity until we had that, and then I was like, I could breathe a sigh of relief and know that I didn't have to
Right.
worry so much about things.
Well, as you said, you know, after the marriages in San Francisco, the state did annul them. The courts annulled them and said, no, these aren't legal, and that legal case worked its way up to the California Supreme Court, which finally ruled last spring that, in fact, you cannot deny the right to marriage to anyone. So that gay and lesbian couples do have the
Based
right
on
to
our
marry.
Constitution, our
Yeah,
state
based on the
state
California
Constitution.
state constitution. It's a fundamental human right, they ruled. So now you can get married in the state of California, and in fact you did just recently.
Yes.
Um,
With
We
a
even got
couple
our
of-
marriage license back from it's all signed, sealed, and
Yes.
frameable.
Yes.
Or we'll stick it in the safe deposit box probably.
So you had another wedding, not as big as the first wedding.
No, it was really what we wanted to do was go to San Francisco and get married there, sort of a, you know, where history all started kind
Sort
of
of as a
thing.
tribute to the
Right,
San
just a
Francisco's
civil
generosity.
ceremony.
Exactly, just in a civil ceremony, and then we were unable to do that because of some family issues that I had, and so we had a big party, and the plan for the party was we would have already been married,
Uh-huh.
and then we weren't, so our just married shirt had to be almost married,
Right.
and so then we
2
really
days later, we
You really got
very
married.
last minute
we ran up to Oakland and got a, and it was funny because, you know, you walk in and you're getting your marriage license. I'm like, there should be bands. There should be something big happening here. You walk in, you pull a number, they call your number, you go and sit down, and they say, you know, you give them a check, they give you a form. That's it.
It was very
It
anticlimactic.
was very, I mean,
Well, that's because he had such a big wedding at the winery.
That's right.
Anything's going to be anticlimactic after that.
yeah. It was
So-
very important, but very, you know, it's like a friend of mine said, who also, she and her partner got married this summer, was we have a very schizophrenic feeling about wedding, you know, about marriage, because on one hand, our relationship is the same. I mean, we've been married, you know, to one another, and our relationship has, for a very long time, without this piece of paper. And so on one hand, you want to say, well, it's not important. But on the other hand, it is important, because it goes back to that whole acceptance thing.
Yes.
It goes back to security. You know, how different do I feel after the second marriage than I did after the first? Well, after the first, there was more, you know, now everybody knows, and we had this big party, and it's a rite of passage type of thing. And this time it's more of a legal security. It's more of a
Right.
you know.
Well, you have the weight of California law recognizing your marriage
And it really
now.
does feel different. And now, my favorite thing is when someone says, "Are you married?" I can say yes. And there's no asterisk in my head that
Yes.
says, "Well, sort of, but not really legally," and blah, 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 blah. I can just say, yes,
Right.
I'm married.
Well,
And
there's,
it's
there's
awesome.
still the federal law. Right?
Well-
Now, you mentioned to me, Melissa, in the green room that you're a federal employee.
That's right.
So what does that mean in terms of like health insurance? Is Jennifer covered on your health insurance policy?
No, she's not, and there are no provisions in the federal employment system for domestic partnership benefits. So
Okay, so even though she's your spouse, no
It-
health insurance coverage
Yeah.
under your
We've been
employment.
together 20 years. I'm not working. I'm a stay-at-home mom, so I've chosen to stay at home and exhibit family values and take care of our son and our child. But I don't exist as far as the federal government is concerned. I can't get on her health insurance, and we have to pay over $500 a month for my health
For health
insurance
insurance.
because I'm not working outside the home. And I'm not eligible, even though we've been together for 20 years, for any of her retirement benefits or anything like that.
So federal marriage would still have
Would
a
be
big
a
impact
big,
on your
a
lives.
big
Yes.
impact. We would get married again.
Yes, we
if
would.
we needed to.
we're hoping it's in the future somewhere and we can just get grandfathered in. But if we have to get married again, we'll go.
You'll do that.
We'll
You'll
go
go
to
that route.
DC. We'll do whatever we have to do.
A friend of mine after this,
Wow.
our second marriage this August, said, well, now what is your anniversary? She's like, I have no idea which date is your anniversary. So we're just keeping our original one from when we first met and what day
Well,
we
there's nothing
counted.
wrong with having multiple anniversaries.
They're hard to keep track of.
So there is a possibility you'll have a federal marriage. But there's also an unfortunate possibility that the voters of California will decide that California does not recognize same-gender marriage. That is, they will amend the California state constitution to remove the right of marriage from some people, including you. Now, if that happens, you're probably grandfathered in, although I imagine there's just going to be a ton of lawsuits about that. Now,
Well-
none of my straight friends have to worry about other people suing to have their marriages annulled.
No, but
I can't
unfortunately,
believe these people don't have better things to do with their
Yes.
time and their money, is the thing I can't believe.
and
But-
unfortunately for us, we're not surprised. We're not outraged, because it's a progression, and you just roll with the punches, so to speak.
Right.
But that's why we knew we had to get married before Election Day. I mean, whatever we had to do, we would do it to make sure we were married before then.
Yes, and I can't tell you how many couples I know have done that. There's been a real rush to marriage. Of course, as soon as the California Supreme Court said people can get married, all the county offices were just full of people waiting to get married.
Well, it was interesting on the day that I knew the announcement was coming out, and I was driving down the road, and this was before we had to have the headset for our phone law went into effect. But I got a text from HRC announcing, because I hadn't turned on the radio. Nathan was in the car, so we were
Text
listening
message
to,
on your
We were
phone.
listening to Rafi or Blues Clues or something, you know.
Right.
But yeah, so I got a text message on my phone that told me that the Supreme Court California Supreme Court had granted that we could get married, and I burst into tears. And I was like, well, I guess I was a little more emotionally invested in that decision
Than you
than I
thought you were
thought I
going
was.
to be. I can understand that.
I just
Well-
burst into tears.
Well,
you know.
I'll have to have you on again after the vote so we can see what happened and how you feel about it. I want to thank you so much for joining us, and I want to thank you for joining us. Please, if you want to know more about PFLAG, check out the website, www.pflag.org, pflag.org. Thanks for joining us.
They're definitely a married couple, so they deserve to be able to enjoy the benefits of being a married couple.
I support him 100%.
I'm a married woman. If there's any threat to my marriage,
I think it's insane that we wouldn't allow same-sex marriages.
They pay their taxes. What more do you want?